Coming up, the Brooklyn Nets get beaten so bad by the Sacramento Kings, we figured why not commiserate on their misery a little bit ahead of schedule. We break down the bad game, the upsetting performance, and I asked Doug a bit of a philosophical question, all coming up next.
You are Locked On Nets, your daily Brooklyn Nets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, friends, it is the Locked On Nets podcast right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team, the Brooklyn Nets, every single day. Over there, you're going to find Doug Norrie, owner-operator of DFSR, for all your daily fantasy sports rankings from DraftKings to FanDuel. He's got you covered. I'm Adam Armbrecht, breaking down the New York Football Giants on the One Giant podcast with my boy Andy Mack. We thank you for making us your first listen of the day, free on all those great platforms. And Doug, I got to tell you, stumbling over my words at the top, kind of forgetting that we were welcoming in the entire live audience over on YouTube, but that's going to be okay because it lines up perfectly with what we saw from Brooklyn on the court tonight.
Oh, we're watching this game in the fourth. It's 129-90 right now. If you need any update of where this is going, Adam and I were quickly searching what the most amount of points a team has put up in regulation, because it feels like the Kings are probably butting up against it right here. Total disaster, F-. I don't know what else to say. I mean, we're going to find, I have lots to say. But in terms of like high level analysis, like what can you do? They're down 39 points. There's 8 minutes left in the game. They're getting completely killed. It was bad on every single front. It's not your whole season, like it is still just one game, but it's following a loss to a really bad Lakers team, and it's making the Kings look like the Globetrotters. And so we're just in a situation now where if you're a Nets fan, you are looking at this situation and saying, yeah, it was a nice beginning of the run here with Jacques Vaughn after, with the Kyrie suspension and Vaughn taking over for Nash, and you had a nice little run, and they get the defense up into like the top 5 in terms of defensive efficiency. I mean, that gets literally wiped off the map with this game. And yeah, it was a problem in literally every single facet. Like they underperformed every single place that you can evaluate an NBA game. Like they were a D- or worse. And so I said last game against the Lakers, like midway through the third quarter, right before they staged a little bit of a comeback, right? To get back in the game, I was like, this is the Nets. This is the worst the Nets have looked all year. It took about 48 hours to have that statement be wrong. This game was pathetic. It was their worst game of the season by far. It's a disaster.
Does not help that this marks the 15th game of the season, and we talked about formulating our opinion of the team and where they can go somewhere between 15 and 20 games. Give me 15 to 20 games. I'll let you know 16. Where it's at. Yeah, you know what? Let's go at least 16 to 21. We'll start there. And it is, man. It's disappointing in that way. And I think you see this a lot of times. From a high level, teams that get that little rejuvenation around a change, right? Steve Nash being fired. Everybody, and that's what all the reports are saying. Kevin Durant and the guys are walking around the Brooklyn facility, peacocking. They're puffing their chests out. They're feeling like they're just big enough for their britches now. And then, to your point, and not only that, like it's almost even more depressing because they come off beating the Clippers, which out of these 3 teams in a row, you'd say, if you beat the Clippers, you feel really good about what you can accomplish over those next 2 games. Whoops-a-daisy, they're now going to lose back-to-back. And we're going to talk about things that I think frustrated me and you in this game, coaching decisions or lack of coaching decisions. We'll try to at least offer one, may only last 60 seconds or so, silver lining around what Ben Simmons showed in this game. However, it did bring to mind this thought that we talked about, the Kyrie Irving situation and what, how good he is. And you ran down all the stats and we know that. But we both landed on this idea. Me on the side of, I don't think you're going to win a championship this year. And therefore, you should begin the process of disassembling what this roster has been. You are of the mind, justifiably, that you got to keep Kyrie because the team's better with Kyrie. And whatever you're trying to do, it's obviously better with him. I know your knee-jerk reaction is not going to change your mind off of this game.
Sure.
But this doesn't help the cause, like in any form or fashion, because with or without Kyrie, you weren't winning this game. And no one need try to put that narrative out there about what you lacked without Kyrie.
Yeah, I don't think you make like personnel moves. I don't think you're suggesting this either, but like I don't think you make personnel moves off of 1 game or 5 games or 10 games, honestly. Like I think that's just there's just not a good process to go about doing that. You are correct that having Kyrie in this game would not probably have mattered. I do think there's some point where the game is just a waterfall falling over the, moving over the dam. And it's like, at some point the levee breaks and you just give up trying to stop it. And so like where these games kind of get out of hand,
tuck your limbs inside the barrel and prepare to go over the falls.
Yeah, the game was like 40-40 and they went on like a 30-10 run or something like that. And so, and having good players can help stop those runs, and then things don't necessarily spiral out of control. It'd be hard to make the claim, had Kyrie Irving been on the court here, the Nets would have won the game. I'm watching as we record this in the background. They're down 34 or 36, right? So it's like there's just no chance. So I don't think like you make a determination off of this game, or even like this plus the Lakers game. I think, and I honestly think in some ways, and we're going to obviously talk about, what Sabonis did here and what Terrence Davis did here, and, sort of, and obviously later with Ben Simmons. I do think the Nets are in this weird spot where like they're kind of optionless also. It's like, it's even to decide that this wasn't the right course. It's not like they have all these great options, right? It's not like these players have any real market value at this point. So I don't even know, even if you were of the mind, let me put it this way, even if you were of the mind that these two Lakers and Kings games were some kind of barometer for what the Nets' future is, right? Even if that was the case, I don't think they have really any more moves to make, right? Like, I don't think trade Durant. I don't think there are tons of moves here. These guys are all at low value right now. Most players that you would think about trading, I'm not even suggesting it, but like,
we're stepping outside of
their values at the lowest it can be right now. Simmons' value is the lowest. Kyrie's value is the lowest. Harris, you can't make a shot. His value is at the lowest. Like, the only guys that have like looked pretty good here, Curry's hurt kind of still. He's looked okay.
Thought the trade Yuta. Damn.
He's their best player.
And I think, and it's funny too, because you do bring up that idea. And I think, and again, I wanted to have just this existential component to this game, mostly because this game.
Well, I'll tell you right now, when you're losing by 40 or whatever, it is when you have existential conversations, because like, this isn't we're not going to X's and O's this game and be like, we are going to a little bit, because there are some things where the Nets were just egregiously bad here. But on a high level, you have to actually have discussions sometimes where it is like a little bit of a bad run and there is an epically bad loss, like forfeit in the third quarter kind of loss. Like, you do start thinking on a high level about what's going on with this team, because it's pretty hard for quote unquote good teams, even in the NBA, would run hot from threes and stuff like that, to get smoked this bad. I mean, this is an epic blowout.
Yeah, and you have Kevin Durant, but Kevin Durant was on the court for this game, just in case you weren't aware, and that makes a big difference too. But just
Kevin Durant, Nick Claxton, Ben Simmons, Joe Harris, Seth Curry. I mean, we're not running down the Thunder end of season last year when it's like Aaron Wiggins and like dudes you never heard of, and they're going out and playing 48 minutes because they're trying to lose. I mean, you can still run down a list of players here that are NBA players. Some are superstar guys. And so it is a problem, right? Right. It is a problem to have games like this.
And just to tie a bow on that thought here, and then we're going to get into the things, as you mentioned, what Sabonis did very well and very effectively in this game, how bad the Nets looked specifically on the defensive end, and then some real gripes that I have with decision-making coming out of the halftime break. But to your point, though, it's like you not only we talk about the high-level superstars and where their value would be on the trade market, you're also seeing all the supporting cast members go down the chain of command in terms of what other teams would be willing to give up. So it really diminished. It's a very bad spot to be in. Obviously, single game, and a lot of things can change over the next handful. We'll dive into what Sabonis and the Kings did so well and how the Nets made it so easy coming up here in a second. But first, if I could, Doug, I would love to tell you a little bit about our friends over at Turo. That's because Turo is the world's largest car sharing marketplace. With Turo, you can book any car that you want, wherever you want it, from a community of local hosts. You can browse a huge selection of vehicles for just about any occasion or budget across the US, UK, our friends to the north in Canada, and coming soon, Australia. Josh Lloyd's going to want some of that action. Find affordable economy cars if you're on a budget and just need to get from A to B. You can test drive new electric vehicles that you've had your eyes on and see how you feel for them everyday life, right? Get a little sense of what you got going on there before you make the big purchase. And of course, many Turo hosts can even deliver the car right to you, right at your doorstep. Walk out, hop in, drive away. Every trip is backed by liability insurance. Terms, conditions, and exclusions apply. Forget boring rental cars and find your drive at Turo.com.
All right, two things going to make me feel better right now. First, Durant Sharp just hit an above the break three-pointer, and we're going to talk to you about our friends over at Built Bar. You know, we've been talking about Built Bar for a while now. That's because Built Bar is super easy to talk about because they figured out the flavors in a protein bar. They made it taste good, and they made it healthy for you. Listen to some of these new flavors: cookie dough topper, coconut brownie bar, coconut brownie topper. They got the chocolate peppermint granola. They're just kind of like putting all the great flavors together here. Candy cane brownie. Come on now. That's in the puff form. Built Puffs are like biting into the universe's most delicious cloud. This is what Built Bar has got for you. They're literally the best tasting protein bar out there. That's pretty much a point and stop statement. They're really good for you. The stats to back it up: 100% real chocolate, 17 grams of protein, shockingly low sugar and calories, just 130 calories on these bad boys. You're going to get 15% off of your order. You have to use the promo code LOCKEDON15 at built.com. Go 15% off that order. Use the promo code LOCKEDON15 at built.com.
Okay, your choice here, Doug, because Day'Ron Sharpe just hit an above the break three, and it would bring me to one of my gripes with this game. But should we stay in order here and talk about how the Kings destroyed the Nets, or can I get right into my biggest problem coming out of halftime?
Go into your biggest problem, and it's probably they're gonna end up intersecting in the same probably place here. But go ahead.
Yeah, the team's a mess in the first half. They're absolutely getting destroyed. You go into the break, you're down by 20 plus, and at that point, it's okay. It's not always the case. And Doug would rightfully push back in a lot of games where I'd say, I want more of this young player. I want to see a little more of Yuta Watanabe. Why isn't he playing more minutes? Whatever the case may be. Well, guess what? Because game scripts matter, and your best players tend to help you give the best chance to win the game. However, you had such a sample size in the first half of this one. Joe Harris and Edmund Sumner combined 1 of 9 from the field. You mentioned Harris not knocking down the perimeter shots. Yuta Watanabe comes in. He plays, I think, 9 minutes in the first half, gives you a little spark, gives you more length. And then combined with Sabonis just absolutely having his lunch inside the paint and giving Nicholas Claxton both trouble and fouls, I can't figure out why, if you're Jacques Vaughn and you see the way the game has gone, just go to something different. Really basic stuff. Give me Yuta to start. They brought him in after 2 minutes in the third quarter. Get Cam Thomas in there. Take out Sumner or take out Joe Harris. Put Seth Curry in there. Get this combination of, yes, your backcourt's going to be a bit small, but you're going to have 3 other big bodies out there with Simmons or Claxton, Kevin Durant, Yuta. Try something different. And throw Markieff Morris or Day'Ron Sharpe at Sabonis for a few possessions. Like, what is the risk of having some thicker bodies take some fouls for you? That was almost in a cascading list of frustrations in this game. That, I think, bothered me to no end, that you came back out in the third quarter and you said, you know what? Let's try it again.
I mean, they had it in their mind, obviously, too, because Yuta had the quick hook, or excuse me, Sumner had the quick hook, and in terms of for Watanabe, yeah, it was just all of a problem. I'm with you. Like the Sabonis piece,
Royce bad in this game too, by the way. Just yeah,
who was bad?
Royce O'Neal also bad in this game as well.
Yeah. I mean, everyone was bad. So let's just start there. Every single guy, every guy in the net here was except for Durant probably was bad. So that's a blanket statement. The part with Sabonis where it's clear that he's just completely overmatching the Claxton. They don't bring any help, right? Like they just kind of shade a little help a few times. For the most part, it was just absolute bully ball. At that point, you have to make something, like you have to put Sharp in there. Like Sabonis isn't going to stretch you too bad, like to the 3-point, out beyond the arc. For the most part, like that's not really, he can do it, but that's not been a huge part of his game. They're trying to run the ball through the low post with him, and especially they're going to run it through the low post when everyone is just licking their chops coming over half court because they see that he can just basically destroy Claxton in this matchup. And at that point, yes, like you have to get another body on him or just a bigger body, like try someone else. I agree with you that like the changes like that were a little too slow to come. I think too, like personnel wise, there aren't so many different options that they have at this point, right? Like it's not like they don't have a Domantas Sabonis analog here. It's something that Nets fans have been going nuts for a while. I understand it. These are the examples of the times where it looks really bad, like when they're just getting completely destroyed on the interior by an offensive big. It has been a problem for them in the past. It'll probably continue to be a problem for them in the future. I agree with you that there probably should have been some kind of adjustment. At that point, it was also almost definitely too late. Start Simmons, even like start Simmons.
That's
over
what I mean.
Claxton,
What,
like,
yeah,
and
exactly. Whatever it is, just do something different.
Yeah.
Just try something different for the sake of, like, to your point, we're only 6 minutes away. Start of the second half. You're 6 minutes away from making decisions about getting your starters out and waving the white flag. And by the way, Kevin Durant played all the way through the entire third quarter.
Malpractice.
Boggled my mind.
Complete malpractice for him to play.
Worst
like
31 minutes, right? We talking about a minute. 31 minutes is about 15 minutes too much for Kevin Durant probably in this game. And at a minimum, I said, first 5 minutes of the third quarter, you close it down to 15 or 12. Okay, you're going to keep him in there. They don't. The lead actually balloons for the Kings. What he's doing out there, I cannot even fathom. And I refuse to accept, as we often talk about, hey, Kevin Durant's going to want to play. Good for him. You're not playing. Like, sorry, it's over, right? Like, and you mentioned Ben Simmons or any of these other combinations. It's worth trying the new thing. And the one thing you mentioned there, not having an analog to Sabonis, I didn't want to say this at the top because it would feel like here's the laundry list of excuses for the Nets in this game or any game around this. We know Kyrie Irving is suspended. You had the eye contusion for Nicholas Claxton coming out of the last game. Back issues for not even Ben Simmons, but Yuta Watanabe after he had dealt with the ankle. Seth Curry, Joe, like this team is healthier than it typically has been at the start of seasons, but it's not 100% healthy, right? So like there are all these little things, and then they're just thin, and I was not surprised. But Sabonis had 12 points in the first half. It could have been 30, and I wouldn't have been shocked. It seemed so easy for them.
It only was less because they made every three. Like,
right, because he was setting guys up too.
It was only fewer points for him because they couldn't miss a single shot from beyond the arc either. So there was no more, no more rebounds to get or things like that because they were crushing him on the offensive rebounds too. Again, it was bad in every single facet. And yes, the Sabonis thing was a problem, but it was all a problem. Like that wasn't just the only thing. The perimeter defense was terrible. Mm-hmm. The switches were terrible. They went like a 2-minute stretch without touching the rim because they just kept turning the ball over. Right. Like there was just, it was just problem after problem after problem. It looked like the ball was greased up with some kind of oil on it at times for them where they just couldn't handle passes. Like it just really was, when it rains, it pours, a kind of game. But again, it does highlight so at the one hand, it's like, yes, like sometimes these games can just really, really go bad for you. But a lot of things that did go bad for this team were endemic of the things that we already know are kind of problems for them, right? Like the big man on the interior that can really body certain kinds of players, they just don't have that guy, right? And Nets folks are gonna be clamoring for this kind of dude because this is the kind of game that highlights this problem. Point of attack defense at times where like they need to really close out along the perimeter. They don't have tons of guys that can do that right now. Like they have Simmons, but Harris is not great at that. Curry's not great at that. Mills is undersized. Like, and a team like this that was shooting the lights out took advantage of that, right? So like these are our problems. And then the problem is, so those things are problems. And what you hope for at times with this team is they're going to make it up on the offensive end by sort of overpowering you there, right? With a Kyrie Irving, Kevin Durant, Simmons if he's healthy, Harris and Curry if they can hit threes kind of attack, right? Because you can make up for some of those deficiencies by overwhelming the other team on the other end by just being a total force on offense. Yeah. Except that looked terrible too. so you can't do it. So you're really getting killed on both ends. And it's just all the problems that sort of highlight what we see as problems with the Nets as a team. So I think if there was a game so far this season that does bring out in all the worst ways fears the Nets fans have about this team, this really was the game. Like this is the game. It's like we don't have enough firepower on offense. They can't really get the rotations right. On defense, it's a travesty because we can't stop this one archetype of player. And when you can't stop this guy and you bring help, now there's 3-point shooters wide open all over the place. And a team like guys like Kevin Huerter and Terrence Davis looked like he was the next coming of Michael Jordan tonight. But like these guys will just make you pay, and Keegan Murray will make you pay too. He just got hurt. Like this is a problem. So this game really I think does bring out what I suspect. I not even suspect what I know Nets fans' deepest, darkest fears are about the team. This had for those guys, for that fan, this game had all of it.
Yeah, and coming up here in a second, I'll highlight what I think this game is also symbolic of, just this entire construction around Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving and what it has lacked. And I don't know, maybe we'll get to the silver lining on Ben Simmons. We'll see.
All right, first we'll talk to you about our friends over at betonline.net. betonline.net, your number one source for sports betting info, stats, news, and analysis. Nets were +2 going into this game. They lost by, wait for it, 32. So if you had the Kings side on this over at betonline.net, you're looking pretty good. Also, the over-under, the over-under could have been 270. You would have hit the over at betonline.net. 274 is what this game ended up totaling in at betonline.net. It's got all the latest odds and trends for every professional and amateur league out there, from football to basketball, soccer, esports. They got it all at betonline.net. If you love podcasts, you can go to find those at betonline as well. The fastest and easiest way to get in your betting fix. BetOnline, where the game starts.
Gosh, I wonder what an alternate line spread would have been. Kings -30,
600
could have made some real money tonight if you had some conviction around your Kings. The one thing before we get to Ben Simmons, it's what's so unfortunate that he finally starts to show a couple of little things offensively in a game where it couldn't have mattered any less that he was doing it. But from the high level again, and that's why I came back at the top. Even if Kyrie Irving is playing in this game, even if he's playing this whole season, take away the off-court issues that started up here and the firing of Steve Nash. When you look out across this, and we talked about it in the offseason, Ben Simmons, what does always come back to? Well, if Ben Simmons can just get back to the player that he once was, and if Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant are healthy and on the court together, and if Seth Curry and Joe Harris come back good, and if Royce O'Neal kind of fills in for that Bruce Brown role, and if Nicholas Claxton takes not just a step forward, but then an extra one that we're not even all of these things, there's always been so many caveats to it being a successful season. And I think that if you looked around the league give me the other next 10 teams that have real deep playoff run aspirations, you would not find the 7, 8, 9, and 10-point list of concerns that you have with the Brooklyn Nets. Every team has flaws. No team is perfect, but all these teams either have one of two things going for them: far less issues, far less concerns, better continuity, better coaching, and then also the track record of having had success that they can always think we can figure stuff out. The Nets don't have that kind of latitude. When you lose a game like this, the fan base, I tapped into a couple of conversations. It is not going well out there in Brooklyn. That's it is not good out there right now.
Yeah, no, this again, just to reiterate what we said before, this game is problematic in a lot of different ways. And I we really don't venture into one game making a determination about the entire season, just to kind of go back to what we said at the beginning. And I really don't think that we're doing that here. I can handle a 30-point loss. I'd appreciate it if it happened on the East Coast, right? Where it's just where if I'm just gonna put my vote in about where I'd rather have these games happen, I would much rather have the 7 o'clock start.
Submit that because I sent it to Adam Silver, but he doesn't get back to me all the time.
The 10 p.m. start. That'd be my one major complaint. But again, though, this isn't just one thing. There are bigger problems. You highlight what has been a major problem for the Nets going back years now, which is we'll wait and see. And you get little glimpses of it. The 5-game run that they had here with Vaughn at the start was a nice beginning to this. Other teams are kind of in some ways starting to figure this out. We're going to run things through the Durant, and, we're going to live with some Embiid Summer, 3-pointers, and we don't need to close those out. And, if we just kind of drop back on Claxton on the short roll, he's going to kind of not have a ton to do, right? There are ways that you've seen teams sort of solve this a little bit over the last couple games, because it's not like the Nets have a million things in their offensive bag. It was nice. It was a nice little run while it lasted. I believe that it's somewhat repeatable, but there are ways to combat it. And we're seeing how teams are doing this. Flash the double, make sure you stop Claxton on the short roll, don't guard Sumner. And if Joe Harris and these guys aren't going to hit threes, it's over. There's nothing else to be done.
And it's the irony about, Jacques Vaughn takes over and they say he's just simplifying things, getting back to basics. And
by the way, I think the strategy is correct. I'm just saying that it is not a high level game of chess here. There's ways that you can combat what the Nets are trying to do.
No, and that's the potential problem, right? Hey, simplifying things makes a lot of sense. The problem is, in theory, it's easy to adjust to it as well. And if you go back to the first 7 games, Steve Nash or not, you say, okay, what's your counter move, right? Blow for blow, how are you adjusting back to what teams are doing? And there seems to be a lack of ability to do that, at least over these first handful of games for Jacques Vaughn. And again, full personnel, all those other things that go into it. One of the things, just to go into the game for a second, one of the areas that I was finding myself being frustrated on the offensive end, I specifically thought about it with Seth Curry, that he has the ability on ball to take a guy off the dribble a little bit, likes to go baseline. We've seen Joe Harris do a bit of this too. But I think some of the things that I prefer to see, and I'm talking about in this game, but I just mean overall as well, is trying to, even for the non-Kevin Durant's or non-Kyrie Irvings of the team, finding ways to create the offense that works for them. Like Curry wants to set up that 3-point shot, wants to be in the corner, but he's quick enough to get baseline off the dribble. And I'm trying to think back about the number of times that I've seen a screen down towards the baseline that actually creates the ability for Seth Curry to stay baseline, cut inside towards the paint, and either go for a layup or kick it out somewhere else. And you could plug in Edmund Sumner into this equation. You could plug in Cam Thomas potentially into this if you want to. Specific sets that afford you the ability to maybe suck the defense down and let Kevin Durant find himself in one-on-one matchups with space to operate. So, like, I know this game is not the one to start dissecting the play-by-play, and also it's something I want to watch going forward, because the idea that if they're shooting 35, I think 36% from beyond the arc, they're middle of the league right now. If that's not going to fall for you, you need to have the secondary option. Something we talked about with Joe Harris to start this season. He was a mess tonight in every single phase of his game. But you can see, I think, that some of the players, the supporting players, are saying, what do I go to next if my shot isn't falling right now? You need to have a system that helps kind of work through that, not what looked like tonight, a lot of clunky plays, a lot of congestion, and then, as we've seen repeatedly, a lot of stagnation when things start to break down.
They just need Kyrie Irving. They just need another guy that, because specifically other players can take the pressure off this situation, right? The whole thesis behind the team is these other guys are supposed to take the pressure off, so you're not actually asking. I get what you're saying. What you're saying makes sense in this current construction. In this current construction of this team, you actually need these guys to do that stuff because they're sort of out of options.
But they're here to be constructed around superstars.
What should be happening is the opposite. The opposite should be like those guys should just be doing this thing, which is shooting 3-pointers, because Kevin Durant, and it's not Durant's fault, he's been fine. Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving, and Ben Simmons are supposed to lighten the load so that these guys can just operate. So I get what you're saying. You are correct in this iteration of the team, except that this is not what the iteration is supposed to be. What it should be is you have a guy like Kyrie who a defense cannot let off at all, right? Mm-hmm. They have to be up on all the time, on ball and off ball. And like they have to bring help going to the rim because he finishes so well at the rim. And now all of a sudden space is just open so that you don't have to think about running pin downs for Seth Curry to like get to the baseline and stuff like that, because you really don't want that to be the way your offense is constructed. They can't do it. And then it's funny too. And maybe this leads before we get out of here. By the way, really appreciate everyone that's jumped in. Tons more people showing up here on YouTube as we go. But
for this positive broadcast,
well, let's talk about Simmons here, because the thing is, Simmons is supposed to be part of this situation, right? Yeah. And the hope is that if Simmons, in the best version of, we'll just speak offensively about him, the best version of Simmons on the offensive end is a guy who is attacking the rim and has the size and strength that if he's not going to be able to finish at the rim, to be able to find open shooters basically everywhere on the court, because he's so tall and his vision is elite and he can really read and react very quickly. It's funny, tonight we actually saw it for the first time, kind of, right? Like where he looked fully healthy and he looked very aggressive, at least in the first like 3 minutes that he was in the game, probably a little longer. The first time he touched the ball took it right at Sabonis, in space, in sort of like a mini transition, took it right at him. Next possession, demanded the ball on the high post, read on a Durant cut right away, And it was like, okay, here we go. Took the ball to the rim multiple times. You're like, okay, this is what we're supposed to be doing.
Elevated on compared to the last time where it didn't look like actually got that high. Elevated on an alley oop
Off
on the left
Curry's
side of it. Yeah,
off Curry's alley
and he
oop.
was
Yep.
up above that rim and threw it down. No, 100%. And it wasn't. You said aggressive, and I think that it's the right word, but also I think comfortable. He just looked comfortable offensively, and we haven't seen that yet. And there's a little more quickness. When you say he took it at Sabonis, I don't think he could get around anybody when we first were seeing him this season. This was where he went at Sabonis and was just able to, hey, I'm going to get around you. Keep your body in front of me if you want, but I'm going to finish at the cup.
Yeah, and this is what you have to see. Like, if the defenses believe at all that he's going to be doing that, and it's going to have positive, well, for Ben Simmons, have positive effects, that will be a thing that you have to sort of start to defend, because if he can start finishing at the rim or like drawing fouls. I know he doesn't really want to do that, but getting other guys in foul trouble or just opening up lanes like that. I mean, look, this is easy. The Nets just need him to do that. It's not if he can do it. It's just at this point, they need him to do it. He has to be able to do it. And I was really so encouraged with that first kind of 3 to 4 minute stretch where it looked like he either set himself to do it or just felt healthy enough to do it, or whatever it was put his head down, cross Sabonis over.
Yep.
On that sag defense, on that drop defense that we've seen teams run over and over against him. And if he's going to be able to try to do that, that is a path for these other guys to get good looks. And so I don't know. I hope to see, we have to look out for that next game, because this is something that we really need to see on repeat for him. It has to, he just can't be, if he's not doing that, it's just not, there's no point in doing it at all.
And that's the hope here is that's we're talking about the chess game, right? That forces the other team to make an adjustment. If you can have Ben Simmons doing that, then things have to look different defensively, and it opens up some other opportunities. He did say, before we go, saw the pregame interview with him where he said, and this is where I think the Brooklyn Nets, wouldn't you know it, are never straightforward with their injury conversations. At media day, everyone said healthy, feeling great, get out of my way. But then in the pregame of this one, he said, he went back, he's watching tape of himself, seeing where he can improve, seeing where he can get better. And he's, in his words, seen a couple glimpses of, oh, there's Ben, seeing his own game on film. But very much acknowledging that he wasn't there when the season started. So and that's okay. But I think we all came into the year going, he's healthy, ready to go. And then we've all had to slowly walk that back and try to make a determination. Where is he from a health standpoint? Where is he from a conditioning standpoint? And if this is the first little baby step going forward, great. But guess what? The 3 or 4 minute first initial burst that we saw from him, it's not going to be enough. Going to need to see this a couple more times.
Yeah, I mean, in some ways, it's a shame that we have to still kind of find all these little positives, because it just really, really hasn't been very good from him. But this is the beginning glimpse, hopefully, of what he can do. He also, he had a couple very close plays where he looked like he was going to get out in transition on steals. It's starting to happen. But we'll get out of here on this. The problem is, among many problems, is that for as much as we're trying to find some positives with Simmons' game here, and I think there were some to grab onto. What's his salary here? Oh shoot, I just forgot what it was. He's 37 million, 35 million. He makes 35 million. He's the backup center. This is the situation that the Nets are running right now, right? He's a 35.
I think it's a good price point.
He's a $35 million backup center for them as they're currently playing him, right?
And he's doing some things,
It's a disaster. It's a disaster. And not to say it can't get better, and not to say health can come, and not to say it can't ramp up to 33, 34 minutes and all this other stuff. But this is where the Nets are right now. They just are in a situation where they're reeling for a bunch of different reasons. And one is because just the amount of salary they've allocated to guys who either aren't playing or barely playing is just not tenable in the NBA. You simply can't make up for it along the edges. If you siphon off almost $80 million worth of salary into guys who aren't playing or who are playing at replacement or sub-replacement levels, no team can be good. That's not a Nets problem. That's an any team problem at that point. And it's the Nets problem now, but this is kind of where we are.
And I will be interested to see, we'll have an off day conversation here on the podcast around maybe adjustments you theoretically could try to make to this roster to better benefit the new version of the superstar driven team that you maybe or maybe don't have. Gosh, I'm exhausted.
Woo, baby. Ended on a low note. Okay, we're gonna get out of here. Usually on post games, we jump into YouTube and do some of these, and we will do that. It's just that it's with some of the West Coast swing here. It's a little harder. It's a little harder to swing going crazy into the YouTube live. So I see all the people out there are really, really appreciative of everyone that's jumped into YouTube, that jumped in after this game. You know, these are the games you wonder sometimes, like, hey, are people going to be coming around now? People want to talk Nets, man. Like sometimes the low points are the things that bring the people out. So really, really appreciative of everyone that jumped into YouTube. Like I said, when they get back onto the homestead or just on the East Coast, we'll do a little more extended YouTube lives because we want to answer a lot of the questions that are in there. It's just not going to happen tonight. Make sure if you're just listening onto the podcast, we had our best ever podcast download day 2 days ago. So we're really appreciative of everyone that's jumping on there, everyone that's in YouTube. We looked at the numbers the other day on the podcast. Best ever download day. We've been doing this we had our 500th episode last week, and we're about to hit 1 million listens probably early next week. So this has been a really, really, where the Nets are going. Hey, the podcast graph is pointing up. Really appreciative of everyone that's jumped in and continues to do it. We will be back. Oh, you got to do the quote. Give us a quote on the way out of here. I'm getting so excited about the numbers. I put myself in a better mood.
That's good. No, I feel better. Yeah.
I feel so much better after just going through the podcast stuff. Yeah.
In some ways, you may be saying about this game and about where this podcast is going, inconceivable. You keep using that word. I do not think it means what you think it means. Inigo Montoya from The Princess Bride.
One of the all-time great poets. We will be back again tomorrow talking more Brooklyn Nets basketball.